Good day, students. I presuppose you are well and still fighting for your exams that are about to arrive, not in a long distance time. Today, I want us to have a piecemeal approach and delve to mathematics paper 1 that is going to be written on the 4th of November 2022. And please, as a young reminder, do not approach this paper with an extravagant mind if you do not want to face a complete collapse in the exam room. Now let's deflect our attention to the structure of the paper. How is it going to be presented to you? The paper is likely to consist of 12 standard questions and with a maximum marks of 150 and a maximum duration of 3 hours. And in this duration, grade 11 work is a common denominator. However, grade 10 and 11 work are indivisible. By that, I mean, if you do not practice grade 11 work to the greater details, you are likely to face a complete collapse, or you are going to be hanged like a light bulb. I'm not going to massage your feelings. You must revise grade 11 work extensively and to the best of your collection as well. Now, let's check what are you going to find in your question 1. So in question 1, you are going to find the normal stuff, and that is algebra with a plus or minus 24 marks. So I'm going to break this algebra down so that you get it to how is it going to be given to you. You are going to be given 1.1 to solve for x. Now check. In this solving of x situation, you are going to solve for x by factorization. It's either they give it to you factorized, then you have to equate the factors to 0, or you have to factorize it by yourself. And then the second problem is basically your quadratic, where you're going to use a quadratic formula. Or in some schools in South Africa, you're going to use what we call completing of the square. You know, it's still allowed, but we largely use quadratic formula in them. And you're also going to solve inequalities. In fact, it's still quadratic, but you solve it by means of inequalities. I hope you get that sense. And then you're also going to solve for x by exponential equations, you know, where you apply the laws of indices. Or they may give you the equation where you have to square both sides to remove the square roots. It's likely 3 marks or 4 marks there. And please here, don't forget to check your answers when they give you the square roots. You must square both sides to remove that square root, and then you solve that. It's going to likely result in a quadratic space. And then you factorize again. Please don't forget to check your answers, because sometimes some answers are not really the solutions. They are rather extraneous solutions. So you must really remove them, or you must show them that x, it can be -1, or x is equals to +2 in that case. And then you go to 1.2. I guess this one is your favorite. You're going to solve simultaneous equations. All right. And be very careful here, hey, because sometimes they really misbehave. Check the one which was written in 2015 November, the metric one. So they really misbehave there. Please go check the situation. You also go to 1.3. Basically here you find the nature of the roots, and we call that the discriminant. You know, you find your discriminant there. So in this discriminant, it's basically algebra. So you need to be very careful, you know, to check where the values of p for which this will have non-real roots, or will have real roots, or the roots will be equal. But be very careful. I repeat my words. Be very careful in 1.3. They always misbehave, just like the one for last year. They mix the geometric series and some algebra in there. You must go and check that. So it's basically still under the umbrella of the nature of the roots. So please really revise that situation of the discriminant from grade 11 as well. Hence I said that grade 11 is a common denominator throughout the paper. Now let's check to question 2. What are you going to find? In fact, question 2 to question 4, it's going to have a plus or minus 27 marks, and that is your number pattern. All right, number pattern and series and sigma notation. Let me break it down for you. In number pattern, what you must revise is linear pattern, which is an arithmetic pattern, sequence or progression. You must revise your quadratic pattern. You must also revise your geometric pattern. These are patterns. Please get that. It's a sequence. But that's for grade 12. Linear pattern and your quadratic pattern and your geometric pattern. Now, you go to your series. That means the sum of terms, all right? You are going to revise arithmetic series, and please, you must know how to prove this one. You must also know how to prove the geometric series, and also how to calculate the sum of terms there. And be careful here, we do not have a quadratic series. We do not have such a situation. We have two series, which is arithmetic and a geometric series. If you go down after the series, you are going to find what we call the sigma notation. It basically summarizes the number of terms there are in a particular series. Please make sure that you know how to find the next terms, how to find the general term of that particular progression. You must know how to find the number of terms. And I need to really warn you here on the number of terms. Your n represents a positive integer, or rather natural numbers. That can only mean that your n cannot be 0, your n cannot be a fraction, your n cannot be negative. So if you are to solve for n and you get a negative number, or the other one is positive, you must show them that n cannot be a negative 2 if it's negative 2, or n is going to be equals to 5 if it's 5, That is the number of terms. And know how to get the difference like the usual way. Know how to get the common ratio for geometric progression. So please, guys, please make sure that you really visit those things. Now, let's check from question 5 to 7. What are you going to find here? Here, you're going to find functions. Hey, be careful here because it has a lot of marks. Functions, if you check it quite largely, you'll see that the majority of the questions here are from grade 11. So I'm going to break it down. It's going to consist of plus or minus 35 marks. Check. Functions, you need to revise your straight line. They are going to ask a straight line, but largely they mix it with a quadratic function, or rather a parabola function. So parabola and a straight line are going to be mixed. In most cases they're not. And then you must know your quadratic very well there. Please make sure that you revise quadratic functions. You also revise your hyperbolic function, which is hyperbola. That's where you have asymptotes there. But I'm going to break it down for you. You need to revise exponential functions. That is still grade 11. But with the exponential, if you check how they ask it, they ask it with the likes of the logs. So you must practice the log functions as well, and they come quite very handy with what I call inverse functions. So you must know the inverse functions of either the log, of the exponential, which is the log functions. You must know the inverse of a quadratic as well. They are going to really ask you along those lines. So also in functions, you must know how to get your asymptotes. You must know how to get your intercepts. You must also know how to find the coordinates of the points on the functions. You must know how to find your turning points, primarily on a quadratic pattern. Here you can use a grade 11 techniques, which is to find the axis of symmetry, and that is x equals to negative b over 2a. You find that x value, you plug it back into the function to get the corresponding y value of that particular polynomial, or you can derive, because remember the turning point, we're talking about either the minimum or the maximum. So you can derive the function, that quadratic stuff, and then you equate that to 0. You solve for x. It's going to give you the axis of symmetry of a quadratic functions. From there, you take that x value, you put it in your function to get its corresponding y value. That is primarily your turning point. And the other name for turning point that they are going to really charm you with is a stationary point. So please make sure that you know that they are going to ask you stationary points or your turning points on the graph of f. So please make sure that you are well inclined with those two terms. Now, that's your functions. Get and also to interpret the function A. Please make sure that you know how to interpret the functions. By that I mean check where the function is decreasing or where the function is strictly increasing. You know, they are going to ask you that. Or when I say interpretation, they are going to ask you to find the values of x for which f will be bigger than 0 or f will be less than 0. That means negative, which is below the x-axis. Sometimes they will say for which value of x is f equals to g. That's where you check the point of intersection where the two graphs are equal there. Now, for the interpretation, they're going to ask you also where is f at x bigger than the g of x. That means you're going to check where f is on top of g. Please make sure that you know how to deal with this one. And lastly, on functions, you must know how to get the vertical length and the horizontal length. Please make sure that you know how to get the vertical length. This one, they love it. That's where you minus the y top with the y bottom. And then that is largely, normally it results in a quadratic space. You subtract the y top with the y bottom. That means the top function minus the bottom function. It's always going to result in a quadratic situation. From there, you either complete the square or you do your what do you call that? Your derivative again to get the maximum distance, vertical distance in there. That is the y value there. Please be very careful in there. And then also, yeah, on functions is basically your intercepts and also how to give them a neat sketch, how to graph polynomial. They are going to really ask you to sketch them. It's primarily easy. I don't want to, like I said, it's primarily easy. I'm trying to check the car there that is really passing. I just closed I didn't park properly here. Cool. Now, that was question 5 to question 7. Let's go to question 8. I don't think you love this one. Question 8, that is money, you know, chalete. You are going to be asked about finance. I'm not sure if you love it, but I'm going to break it down for you as well. Question 8, it's primarily it's going to consist plus or minus 16 marks, sometimes 15 marks, and something plus or minus 16 marks. So let's check how you're going to be asked finance. Finance is one of the very important things, especially if you be going to varsity and study mathematics like myself. So look, with your finance, they are going to take you back to grade 11 as well. They ask you about the reducing balance method, you know, and the term reducing balance, they may use a diminishing method. So please make sure that you know what is happening there. That is the depreciation situation there. They're also going to ask you to compare the simple interest and the compound interest. You know, they're going to ask you that situation. Sometimes, depending on their mood, they're going to ask you to convert effective to nominal interest rate, and or vice versa. By that I mean from nominal to effective. They may really trick you along those lines. So basically, revise everything from grade 11 and also know your timeline to interpret some situations. Well, that is for grade 11 part, what they are going to ask you as the first question in finance. Now, let's get to the rest of the questions in finance. That is where most students lose their life here. That is annuity. Let me break annuity for you. Now, annuity, we have two types of annuity. The first one is future value annuity. And remember, when we talk about the future value annuity, we are talking about the likes of investment, savings, and also seeking funds, you know. So in the future value annuity, you are saving. primarily there. You are talking about something of the future. You are saving, investing, and the seeking funds. Please do not confuse the seeking funds with the outstanding balance and so forth in the present value annuity. So when we talk about the seeking funds, we are talking about the difference between the inflation and the reducing balance. So that difference is going to give you the value of the seeking funds that is likely going to be used. Normally it's when we talk about the truck being depreciated and so forth there. So they are going to ask you here, they're going to ask you to really find the installment, the monthly installment. That is your X, eh? So be careful there. They are going to ask you to find your X, or they give you the X. They want you to find the number of payments. How long will it take for some situations to occur there? That is the N. And you are going to use logs here. And these logs, you largely use them from your functions, question 5, on your log functions. So please understand the concept of seeking funds, the difference between the inflation, which is the compound interest when the money increases now, minus your depreciation rate. Now, let's get to the interesting part, that is the present value annuity. With this one, we're talking about the loan, or it's primarily, it's the loan or the bond situation. So if you hear them talking about the loan and the bond, or if you have money and you want to withdraw that money now, so it's a present situation, hence the present value annuity. And with this one, be very careful. We are going to have the balance outstanding and it's balance outstanding or outstanding balance. Please get the two. And you must know the formula to use here, because there are a bunch of formulas and that confuses students. There you remember, you have got the last installment on the loan, and sometimes let me just put it this way. If the total number of payment is known, the balance outstanding is going to be the present value formula. But if it's not known, the total number of payments, if it's not known, there's a shipping formula which you must check at the back of the paper. I so wish I can show you that situation, but unfortunately I'm recording myself here as a video, so I can't show you. But I hope those that are really studying, they know what I'm talking about. There's a future value annuity within that outstanding balance situation. And then yes, that is your annuity. And also, just lest I forget, also on your annuity, we are going to ask you about the deferred annuity. That's when you skip some payments along those lines. That is a deferred annuity. All right. And then also, let me check. Yeah, let me just clarify you on this one. It's very, very important. Listen to me carefully. They are going to ask you to calculate N. So your N, when dealing with a future value annuity, be very careful, guys. When dealing with future value annuity, your N, it's in years. So you are going to find that N and divide by 12. That is if you are dealing with a future value annuity. You must divide whatever you're going to get as number of payments by 12, because it's in years. You convert that to years. Please be very careful there. Now, also, when you are dealing with the present value annuity, they're asking you to find the value of N. Here, your N is in months. That's the total number of payment. It's in months. There is a present value annuity. What do? Whatever value that you get, you do not divide by 12. Rather, you add 1 to that. Say maybe you get 181, comma something, maybe 181,205. You round it off, that is 181, but you must add 1 to that 181, which becomes 182 payments, because the loan is granted after whatever situation, which you must read very carefully in your finance. Now, That in overall makes a total of plus or minus 16 marks. I'm done with finance. Please guys revise. Let's get to question 9. Like I said, it's 12 questions standard. Question 9, you are going to find your favorite. I guess you're going to refresh with this one. It's calculus. And the first question is, it's known as the first principle. Extremely easy, by the way. So you're going to have the first principle there. This is very easy. It's 5 marks. I hope you will agree with me. It's always 5 marks. It never exceeds 5 marks. So this calculus situation, it consists of question 9. It's plus or minus 12 marks. The first one, it's first principle. So you have 5 out of 12 now. The remaining one, which is 7 marks, they're going to ask you to find dy by dx. If you are given a polynomial y in terms of x, they are going to ask you to find dy by dx. But if they give you f at x equal to something in terms of x, that means it's a function of x, they are going to ask you to find the f prime at x. Within the same brackets of derivative, they are going to ask you to find dx, or rather d subscript x. It means the same situation like dy by dx, but the manner in which they are asking you, you must really follow just to get the literal sense there. D subscript x of some situation which you have to simplify. You have to please make sure that you know how to simplify expressions. So you have to simplify that factorization. You have to simplify it to the best of your ability or to the best of your collection in that way. So simplify that. As soon as you are done simplifying it, you can now derive. And when you derive that situation, you must drop off dx. For an example, say maybe you have simplified to x squared plus x to the power 1 over 2 minus 3x to the power something there. That is simplified. Then now you can derive each term independently. All right. You can derive that independently and you're going to get your answer there. But when you start driving, that's where you drop off dx. But if you are still simplifying, you continue with your dx. I hope I make sense there. Now let's go to question 10. This is very important. Question 10, it's plus or minus 15 marks. That is cubic functions. With cubic functions, I'm going to break it down also for you here because that is extremely important. That is question 10. Remember that cubic functions. We are going to ask you on the factor theorem and also your remainder theorem. They go hand in hand, those guys. Factor theorem and the remainder theorem. Now let's check. You must be able to show that x plus 2 is a factor of f, or x minus 3 is a factor of f. That means f, if they are to say show that x plus 2 is a factor of f, it means you are proving that f of negative 2 equals to 0. That's how a factor theorem works in your grade 12 situations, unless if you are in varsity, there's some stuff involved there. Now you must know how to get the x-intercept. That is through the factor theorem. You're going to factorize that cubic stuff. There is a long division involved there. Some schools in South Africa, they use inspection. They use a synthetic division. A bunch of methods are going to be used there. So you must know how to factorize a cubic polynomial. Subsequently, you're going to get your intercepts. Please make sure that you know how to do that. Your intercepts, know how to sketch clearly, showing the important informations. We're talking about the intercept with the x-axis and the y-axis there. You must also know how to find the turning points. That is your local minimum and your local maximum. Remember, here it's cubic. So you either have a local minimum or a local maximum. Those are your global extremes. In calculus, when you go to varsity, you will get a global extremes there. So in your high school space, that is your local minimum and the local maximum. How do you get those points? You first derive, you get the first derivative, the f prime at x, the first derivative. You equate that stuff to 0. You solve for x. and you take those points, you plug back into F, because that's where those points, the turning point, they passes through F. So you must plug back those points to get the corresponding Y values of those respective X values. You classify them, in that space. Remember, you're going to have A as negative or A as positive, so you must know that the shape also differs there of those cubic stuff. And also, in cubic polynomial, you are going to be asked about the point of inflations. All right, the second derivative, you must know how to really get the point of inflation there. You derive second time, you equate to 0, you solve for x, and take that x, you plug it back. And this x, it basically discards concavity. It discards the change in concavity. That is the interval on which F is local. It's concave down and it's concave up. Yeah. You must know how to deal with that. You must also know how to get the interval for which F is increasing or F is decreasing. Same stuff, you must know how to interpret the graph of cubic. That is, F is less than 0, or X times F at X is bigger than 0. We call that interpretation of the graph. And you must also know how to get the equation of the tangent. You must get the gradient here. Remember, the tangent equation, we're talking about y equals to mx plus c. So you've got your gradient and you've got your y cut, which is the value of c. And they're all right. So you must know how to really do that. Lastly, in cubic functions, you must know how to apply your mind there. They're going to ask you to find the values of k, for which the graph will have 1 positive root and 2 distinct negative roots. That's where you shift the graph above the axis or below the axis. You must know how to deal with that quite nicely. That is the cubic functions with plus or minus 15 marks. Let's get now to question 11. Yeah, here you're going to be hanged like a light bulb again. That is the application of calculus. If you don't know this one, it really carries 7 marks, plus or minus 7 marks. So you may skip it and do it later, like do important questions, and you will see it later. So here, basically, we're talking about the derivative of measurements to drive your basically your 3D prisms. It's 3D prisms. Your rectangular prism, and also your right circular cone, and also the cylinder. The issue of cylinder, how to get the volume, the surface area of that. And be careful when we mix the cylinder and the hemisphere, or the cylinder and the sphere itself, or the cone and the cylinder. When they combine shapes, it affects the surface area of some formulas. Please make sure that you revise here. They're also going to ask you to find the rates of change, the average speed, the velocity, the position. Extremely easy in there. That is the application of calculus. It has a negative tendency of misbehaving, this one. So please make sure that you visit that to the best of your collection. Please, students, I beg you, make sure that you visit those chapters quite largely. That is 7 marks, so it's worth it, because sometimes it's going to be very easy. Now let's check the last question, question 12. This is the last question. I love it. I love this one. It's my favorite when I teach students. Probability, probability. So this one, it's plus or minus 12 marks. It's the last question, plus or minus 12 marks. I'm going to break it down for you. Like I said, grade 11 work is a common denominator. They are going to ask you about the additional rule of probabilities. What is that? We're talking about 2 events happening here. That is, probability of A or probability of B is equals to the sum of probability of A and B minus the probability of their intersection. That is A and B, where they intersect. They are also going to test you on your mutual exclusive events or mutual inclusive events. For mutual exclusive events, that's where we say the probability of A or B, they are not happening. That is 0. They cannot happen at the same time. This one, they cannot happen concurrently. That means at the same time. You know, they're going to ask you about the complementary events. What is that? The probability of A plus the probability of not A is equals to 1. You know, and be careful, the probability cannot exceed 1, and it can be below 0 in there. So please be extra careful there. They're going to ask you also about the independent events, you know, or dependent events where the probability of A and B equals to the probability of their products. Probability of A times probability of B. That is independent events. But for dependent one, they are not equal. All right. But for independent, probability of A and probability of B equals to the probability of A multiplied by the probability of B. Please get that situation quite very well. And then they are going to ask you about the Venn diagram. You must know what is a Venn diagram, you know, how to deal with Venn diagram very carefully. The Venn diagram can be discussed in 2 events or 3 events. So you need to be very careful. For 3 events, it's when they say 2 learners, 3 learners love English, maths, and physics. And then these other 2 loves, this one of maybe 5 of them love English and maths. You know, those are your 3 events. You must draw those 3 circles and check the intersection. Sometimes you're going to prove that X is equal to something. That is very easy. That one, please, it's a grade 11 stuff. So go and revise it carefully. They are going to ask you about the contingency table. There we're talking about the horizontal probabilities and the vertical probabilities. So please make sure that you are well inclined with that situation of horizontal and vertical probabilities. All right, be very careful there. And they're going to ask you about, let me check, they're going to ask you about the tree diagram. Yeah, this one, sometimes it misbehave, the tree diagram. You must know how to really do your trees. And please, each branch, when you add those branches, they must give you 1. The probability must give you 1. The sum of those branches, they must give you 1 when you add them. And the result of those probabilities, they must also give you 1. The outcomes of those probabilities, when you add all of them, they must give you 1. And then lastly, it's this funny stuff called counting principle. Yeah, with this one, students are facing a serious challenge here. Counting principle, and it's 7 marks. It's plus or minus. No, let me just say it's either 6 marks or 7 marks. They can't exceed 7 marks out of 14 marks, somewhere there. So let me break the issue of counting principle. They are going to ask it to you. They are going to ask you the issue of repetition or when it's not repeated, and they're going to ask you the probability of something in there. For an example, if they are to give you a name Emmanuel, which is my name, they are going to ask you how many ways can you arrange Emmanuel without repetition. So if they say without repetition, you're going to count the number of letters in which my name consists, which is Emmanuel. So you're going to get 8 letters. And you're going to say that is 8 factorial. And that means 8 times 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. All right. You get that number. It's a number. If they say, how many ways can you arrange Emmanuel with repetition? You are still going to count that the number of letters in which my name consists, which is Emmanuel. There are 8. It's 8 letters, Emmanuel. Then you're going to say it's 8 to the power 8. It's when we have repetition. Largely, it's going to give you a very big number there. All right. So they're going to ask you the last question in your counting principle. They're going to ask you about, let me check, the probability, you know, of you starting with vowels and ending with consonant. So you must know what are vowels. That is your R, A, E, O, O. the probability of starting with vowels and ending with consonant. So you must know what a consonant there, and then you get that probability situation over the total number. Remember that we're talking about the probability now. Over, that is going to be 8 factorial. My name, Emmanuel. It's going to be 8 factorial in there. Yes, I think I'm done. Guys. Please prepare yourself, and I love you all, and good luck. And for those who are not going to make it, I'm still wishing you good luck. It's not the end of the world. You're still given a chance to upgrade next year, but for now, forget about the negative view of that. You need to work to the best of your ability and accept any outcome that you're going to get in January. I'm going to make another video for paper 2 because I love paper 2 a lot. I'm going to break it down for you as well. Guys, thank you very much. Please make sure that you share this video to your minimum radius of convergence in your respective location. Thank you very much, guys. Plug the keys. Nakhensa swinene kuva mi koti ku vona video lewani. That means thank you so much for watching the video. Thank you. Until next time.